Tipping off, coming for you on the 13th of October at 8:54 in the morning. I'm David Locke. Alec and Trey, does it work together? We'll talk about it. Pow! Welcome to Tip Off. I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. Glad to be back with you. As I mentioned yesterday, recording this on YouTube now for you. Hopefully that works. You can subscribe to the David Locke YouTube channel, DLocke09, and then you just get it right to you. You can still watch it regularly as well. Hopefully this works better than what we've been doing on live stream for you. A bunch of people seem to be giving me a positive response on that. We've got the NBA 5 coming up, a little fun stuff. I owe Klay Thompson a thank you. I'll get to that in a second. And then we'll look at some interesting things on the Jazz last night and how they played losing to Portland in the preseason. It's preseason. Let me just start there before we do pins across the world. It's preseason. I know it's the only data points we have, but and we didn't look great last night. It's preseason. Okay? Just don't go too bananas, lose your mind, do anything silly when it's preseason. All right, our pin across America or the world comes from Austin, Texas today. Doug O'Keefe here, he says, I'm a resident of Salt Lake when the Jazz arrived in 79-80. I've lived in Austin since 1994. I watch on DirecTV. My son, Brian, I think, also a Jazz fan, lives in Massachusetts. Put me on to you. He's a big Jazz fan, attends all the games in Boston. We were in attendance at the Jersey retirement of Stockton Malone. We also went to the Hall of Fame induction of Sloan Stockton Malone. Keep up the good work. I like it. Paul O'Keefe in Austin, Texas. Thanks very much. For those of you that are new to this, send me an email at dlock09. Give me a little bit of your story. Tell us where you are tuning in from and watching this little thing we call tip-off. So far, places include Kazakhstan, India, Geelong, Australia, France, Red Deer, Alberta, Philadelphia, Clinton, Utah, Munich, Germany, Korea, Greece, Adelaide, South Australia, Huntsman Cancer Research Foundation, Osaka, Japan, Hong Kong, Prague, Czechoslovakia, Stockholm, Sweden, Alabama, Greensboro, North Carolina, Nashville, Tennessee, Bradenton, Florida, Holland, Reno, Nevada, Melbourne, Australia, Chile, Mongolia, Boise, Idaho, Sao Paulo, Brazil, Brunei, Austin, Texas. I didn't add yesterday's. Yesterday's was a fairly pedestrian spot, I remember he said. Oh, Los Angeles. And we have the geezer from St. George. Send us your little story. Let us know your background, where you came, what your Jazz fandom originates from at dlock09@gmail.com. Let's hit the NBA 5. We mentioned it yesterday, Kyle Lowry playing well. He dropped 40 last night. He is the preseason leading scorer now in the NBA and is playing very, very well for Toronto. There's no clearly defined second-best team in the Eastern Conference. I don't like Toronto because they lost Amir Johnson. And I love Amir Johnson. Same way I love Al-Farouq Aminu, who looked very good last night for Portland. Those kind of players that do a lot of things. Too often we talk about what they don't do. Sometimes we should talk about what they do. I think they'll miss him. But they got 40 last night from Lowry. Interesting SI article. Rob Mahoney's doing some great stuff at SI on Drew Holiday. Holiday talking about his minute restrictions. Sounds like it could be like as low as 15 to 17 to 18 minutes to start the year. On a team that has very little depth, Norris Cole just got hurt, and they also have Ashik and Ajinka out. Danilo Gallinari continues to look good for Denver. Jimmer did not play last night in San Antonio's game. I don't know whether I think a lot about it, but he's trying to make the 15th spot. Didn't get any minutes. Doug McDermott bombing threes for Chicago. Took 9 last night. We talked about this the other day. Chicago took 32 threes again last night. Tony Snell's currently starting. Play some Mike Dunleavy on that team. I owe Klay Thompson a thank you. It's a funny story. I didn't know who Hannah Stocking was. My bad. But the Warriors guard has been romancing model Hannah Stocking. However, Hannah Stocking sent out a tweet the other day. When you catch your man naked in bed with a groupie, laugh out loud at Klay Thompson. Stockton tweeted alongside a shot of Thompson with his mouth agape. She then followed the tweet with, I told him I'd at him if he kept harassing me, so I guess he really wanted the tag to get his numbers up. Hannah Stocking has like 1.5 million Instagram followers. I don't know what her Twitter number is, but Hannah Stocking has plenty of people following. I may have been the only person who didn't know who Hannah Stocking was from the looks of things. So, just a good little fun story about Klay Thompson getting busted by his girl on Twitter. Hey, nothing else. That's what I went for. All right, let's talk Jazz for a second. It's preseason. Fear not, they didn't look good last night. The offense doesn't look right. The spacing's off. They've gone small. They went small a ton last night and played. And then they got very one-on-one-y, which might be how you have to play if you're small, because if you start running the motion offense and the flow offense, then they'll switch everything. So much of what the Jazz are trying to do is to deal with the switching. So, I wouldn't. Last night was unfortunate. It'd be much better if your sample size of one and they played great, but they didn't. But I wouldn't go panic on it. Gobert, as I've talked about, he just doesn't have any bounce right now. He's not been impactful the way he was all of last year. The defense actually was pretty good last night. The Jazz played very few point guard minutes last night, and it's getting to be less and less every game. They played 20 minutes of non-point guard minutes last night. Non-traditional point guard. The game before it was 6-10. The game before that it was 5. The game before that it was 2. So opening night against the Lakers, we played 2 minutes of the triple wing. The second game against the Lakers, we played 5 minutes of the triple wing. Phoenix, we played 10, and last night we played 20. Some interesting little notes on this. On the triple wing, the last 2 games with no point guard on the floor, the Jazz are plus 12. With a point guard on the floor, they're minus 35. So last 2 games, remember, Trey didn't play in one of these. The Jazz are plus 12 with no point guard on the floor. And they're minus 35 with a point guard floor. Now, overall, Alec was pretty terrific last night. Got it going. But I think we have to remember that integrating Alec into this team is a big difference. Alec had a good offensive game. I did not think he had a particularly good defensive game last night. In fairness, I thought a few guys, while the Jazz only allowed 88 points on what was about a 100-possession game, I think there'll be some film moments that the coaches are going to be able to teach on here. What I saw on Alec is the same thing we've always talked about, that Ron talks about a lot on the broadcast, is that there's just this kind of off-ball relaxation, and then by the time it's time to play defense, he's got to make 2 movements to the guy's 1, and he gets blown by. Or he's a step late. There was a play where he got a reach-in foul where he just was late coming over in help. So he had 19 points, 8 rebounds, 3 assists. The box score is beautiful. The negative 13 plus minus is not in 34 minutes. There's one thing we got to remember. We're integrating Alec into this roster, and it's different. He's new. I don't think the ball's moving. I feel like every time the ball's sticking right now, Portland had these beautiful touch passes around the outside and moved the ball, and they were electric last night with some of what they were able to do with limited talent. Without Damian Lillard on the floor, they're playing really, they didn't have a lot. They were able to create. I didn't see that out of us very often last night. There was some of it, but not a lot. There was an Alec drive and kick, but there wasn't that swing the ball, touch it around the outside kind of ball movement that I think we're hoping to see out of this team. So some of that's just Alec's got to figure out how he fits, what he does, how everyone's got to fit around him. The one that's interesting to me is whether or not Alec and Trey work together. Now, you go backwards on your research. You go back to the 12-13 season, and the Jazz, when Alec and Trey were on the floor together, they were minus 5.7, but when they were off the floor, they were minus 7 overall. So the lineup was actually better. To some extent, that's because John Lucas was Trey Burke's backup, and that team was terrible. So very hard to garner anything from that information. Last year when Trey and Alec were on the floor together, we were minus 6, but Alec only played 27 games last year. It was only for 671 minutes, and it was a huge amount of it was with Enes Kanter, I would bet. I didn't look that up, but I would bet. And Kanter's, generally we kind of just give him anything that happened with Enes, we kind of devalue now. All right, well now this gets kind of complicated. So how do you figure out what any of this means? Thus far, in the preseason, again, you're taking data off the preseason. So it's food for thought without any great finding here. Right? I think that's kind of like yesterday's conversation. I would say it was food for thought. It's food for thought would be the best way I would talk about it. But here's a note for you on this, because I had enough food for thought. In the 3 games that Trey has played, when he and Alec are on the floor, the Jazz are minus 8. When they are not on the floor together, the Jazz are plus 23. All right. You know what? Food for thought. If I'm Quinn Snyder, I think about that a little bit. Is there a chance that Alec and Trey don't match together? Possible. Last night, it didn't look to me, certainly, as though they were doing a lot of guarding of either of those guys on the opening parts of the game, and certainly looked to me from that point that when they weren't doing the guarding, that there was no floor spacing. I'm going to take a look here and see what I can discover. I'm doing this live while we're on the air because I suddenly realized this would be an interesting concept of if I try to figure out lineups that have Trey and Alec on the floor, but no Enes Kanter. I think I'm going to do this right. There's a chance that live I'm not. I just have quickly pulled a Excel out and to see what I can find here. And wow. If I've done this correctly, which I think I did, this is incredible. And this makes sense because they all started together. Last year, Alec Burks and Trey Burke were on the floor together for 27 minutes without Enes Kanter. I'll have to check that because it just seems so crazy. But if I'm correct in doing this, let me check. There's a chance I'm wrong on this because I eliminated Trevor Booker as well. So let's see whether or not that still holds to be true. It's a little more complicated than that. They only played 27 minutes without Enes Kanter and Trevor Booker, so it might be a little bit more than that, and hard for me to completely go figure out if that's true. But I'm going to try here quickly for you of whether or not I'm going to quickly find the Trevor Booker minutes and that will allow me to tell you whether or not they played more together. They did. They have a few other lineups that were on the floor together last year, but not many. So yes, I made a mistake. That is not that first research. That's why you don't do research live on the air, because when something like that happens, then you think to yourself, that doesn't really make a lot of sense. And then you go research it a little more, and you're like, oh, well, that's why it doesn't make a lot of sense, is because it wasn't right. The Trevor Booker, by eliminating Trevor Booker, I basically eliminated every power forward that was on the roster at that point. However, I now have it for you with this little slight delay. Thank you for enduring that right there. And let's see what we come up with for the success of the Utah Jazz when having these two on the floor together. It's not many more, actually. The sum minutes total for the Utah Jazz last year with Alec Burks and Trey Burke on the floor without the services of Enes Kanter is 55 minutes. So Alec and Trey only played 55 minutes on the floor together last year. In the 14-minute, the most commonly used lineup was Trey, Alec, Trevor, Derek, and Gordon. They were plus 1.5. They were fine. The second most commonly used lineup was Alec, Trey, Joe Ingles, Trevor, and Derek. They were terrible. In 14 minutes, they got outscored by minus 77 points per 100 possessions. It's awful. The next common was Rudy with Gordon, Trevor, and Alec, and they were minus 17 in that sequence. Not great. But there's only 15 minutes of that sample size. They only had 5 lineups that had 10 or more, or 6 minutes that lineups that had 10 or more minutes together. And one was crazy positive when Trey, Alec, what is this year's starting lineup played together last year. In 11 minutes, they were plus 41. Again, only 11 minutes. And only 4 games last year. Crazy numbers. So, really the takeaway here, and by the way, I'm going to make another correction. They played 144 minutes together last year. The takeaway on that is that it's not great. I mean, it's hard to tell. They were combined, when they were on the floor together last year, they were combined minus 6.1. Okay? For the whole season. That's 671 minutes. Of those 671 minutes, all but 144 were with Kanter. Then, so hard to tell. But worth a little food for thought. That there's a chance that Alec and Trey don't work together. Neither of them are good outside shooters. You're playing 4 non-shooters to open your lineup, to open games right now. I mean, it's a visual. Visually, it doesn't look right. I don't know whether it's truthfully a problem, but it doesn't look right visually. Some of the, again, it's preseason. So I'm not going to go fret over anything preseason. Would I like Trey Burke to be shooting above 40% in the preseason? Yeah, that'd be great. That would be better than what we have right now, right? It's a little, yeah. I mean, when we're really hoping Trey's going to take a step forward and have a better season. He came in 9 for 21 last night, and then had another poor shooting night, and he's right back at his. I think he's actually right at. He went 2 for 8, so Trey he's now 11 of 29 shooting for the preseason. Not great. Again, 2 years ago or last year, his preseason was brilliant, and then he didn't have a great season. But yeah, I'd like him to be shooting better than 38% from the field. And in fairness to all of us who feel that way, he's right back at the exact numbers he was for his first 2 years in his career, which makes you a little unnerving. He's at 38% from the field and 31% from three. Not great. I would like Alec Burks has taken 3 3-pointers in 4 games. It's not a great way to live as a shooting guard. I'd prefer. His 8 rebounds is great. Right? There's a bunch of stuff that you can look at right now. Rodney Hood is 4 of 16 from 3. Panic? Nah. It's preseason. Would I rather? Sure. Yeah, it'd be better. It'd be nicer for all of us. Everybody feel better if these offensive numbers were better. Panic? Nah. Change the way you feel about the team? Nah. But this thing's got to mesh. And I would guess that last night's performance puts a little more urgency on the next 3 games. I wouldn't be surprised if we see some cut down. We see some more regular rotation. I'm not sure. I think Quinn's going to hit him pretty hard with training camp this week. And I kind of have a feeling that Portland Sunday, Tuesday, Oklahoma City are going to be full-bore games. If they click, he'll pull back on Thursday against Denver. But otherwise, I think some of this is real. If I'm the head coach of this team, I look at it, okay, this isn't great. The triple wing is interesting, guys. 20 minutes last night, and it's worked. What was the number I just gave you? When the last 2 games with no point guard on the floor, plus 12, with a point guard on the floor, minus 35. Okay? So now ask yourself this question. I brought this up before, but I'll bring it up again. If you're playing 15 minutes a night without a point guard, is that a lot? Is that too many? Might be. But you're only playing, let's say you're only playing 33 minutes a night of a point guard, maybe only 30. Do you need 3 point guards? You've already, really 4, right? Because Dante's on the roster. Or if you're going to be playing, instead of playing 96 minutes out of your 2 wings, right, your shooting guard and your small forward, 48 plus 48, 96, you're actually playing 106, maybe 110, maybe 116, I think we're heading in that direction, then don't you need a 6th wing? Right? So if you're suddenly asking for every time we've ever talked about this, I talk about that there's 96 wing minutes and there's 48 point guard minutes. There's a chance we have to change the way we're thinking about this, that there's 144 minutes for those 3 positions. And we're only going to use 28 of them every night for point guards. So now you're dividing 116 minutes amongst Gordon, Alec, Rodney, Elijah, Joe. Well, that gets to be a lot, right? I mean, if you just equally distributed that, it's still 23 minutes a night for all of them. So you may get to 30. You don't want to take guys over 32 minutes a night. Generally, the organization doesn't want to do that. So there's a chance that you keep your 6th wing, Chris Johnson, rather than your 3rd/4th point guard, Bryce Cotton. This is under the assumption that either Grant Jarrett or Jeff Withey is the 6th pick. So just food for thought. You know, I guess I should include Travion Graham, J.J. O'Brien in that conversation as well. Travion Graham hasn't got a lot of time. He's good. He's a big physical dude. He's an interesting player. All right, that is tip-off today. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you got some information. Hope it was worth your time. Thanks so much for tuning in. I greatly appreciate it. And we'll be back with you tomorrow. See you.